Well, hello there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. And today, I thought, considering that we were stolen an Edgar Wright from last week's Ant-Man film, I thought it would be nice to actually demonstrate an Edgar Wright film with the 2017 Baby Driver. Now, I reached that point, I suppose, in the series where I I'm getting to. I cannot remember what I have said in the early parts, and even to the point where I can't always remember what films that I have covered in the early stages of doing the series. Now, I don't believe I've done Edgar Wright before, but do believe I've talked about him extensively. Perhaps I've talked about Shaun of the Dead. I seem to have a recollection that was earlier this year, but Edgar Wright is a filmmaker who I've admired since I was a teenager. You know, there is something about the attention to detail and the care and passion that he has in the way that he tells story that's really quite rare. I would almost be hesitant to say unique. You know, that this is someone who was a nerd, who became a great filmmaker, but maintained that same sense of nerddom. And I mean, of course, that can be demonstrated from, the TV series Spaced, into his Cornetto trilogy, into Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and then into this. And so, this is someone who really, even to this day, at this later stage, not even later stage, but this further stage in his career, shows a sense of passion for the art form, but, and a particular culture. So, Shaun of the Dead, of course, it was his showing his love of horror, Hot Fuzz, his love of action, and this shows a love of music. Now, I suppose choosing to do this film at this time is quite serendipitous, because it really does pay off a lot of things that I've been discussing over the last few days and weeks. Of course, as I jokingly mentioned at the beginning, with Ant-Man, of course, Edgar Wright was intended to direct it, and watching this was actually just a impulse decision. But again, it's quite nice that it pays that off. I talked quite extensively over during the Baz Luhrmann Red Curtain trilogy about musicality, I suppose, and the sense of imbuing music into your text, and in addition, that further to that, sort of the ways that specifically in Moulin Rouge he uses jukebox, the jukebox musical, and yet reconstructs it and breaks songs down and reforms them to service the narrative and also change their meaning. And though Edgar Wright doesn't quite do it to that degree, there is that same sense of taking music, a character who does nothing but listen to music the whole time, and yet uses that music and uses the lyrics, and when he's watching TV, the visuals to convey meaning both within the core of the narrative, but also to convey what's going on in the mind of Baby, our lead character. And again, it shows that sort of interweaving of text and music. And again, like I say, it shows the love of music and story through music. And there's just something about this that just has this... Like I said, Edgar Wright, like Baz Luhrmann, also demonstrates that mania, that sense of chaos in direction and editing, and yet also it demonstrates a very meticulous sense of edit and focus, because, as I said with Baz Luhrmann, it might look chaotic, but it is treated with, every frame is intentional. It is treated incredibly carefully, because if it was done wrong, it would fall apart, and it requires someone with that sense of knowing exactly what to focus on, exactly how to convey meaning in shot by shot by shot, and yet still maintain that disorientation, and particularly in the driving scenes and the sort of the heisty moments. It really does show that sense of, like I say, attention to detail, and I think that's really, really important. Ansel Elgort is a great lead. There is something to be said about the internalized character, and again, I think previously I've talked about that, the sense that, it's very hard to portray characters who almost never externalize their feelings. And I'm very hesitant when it comes to relating to those sorts of characters. I think some actors do it really well, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to empathise with that character or find the connection between me and them. I remember thinking back with First Man. Now, lots of people love First Man, and they think it is hailed as a great film, but the problem I had is that sense of internalization was something I couldn't get through to really relate to the character. But here, I think it does it so well, where it feels like a character who is processing so much, and yet at the same time conveys little. People are constantly underestimating him, or trying to get through to him, and yet failing, because everything he thinks and feels is incredibly reserved, with the exception, of course, of Lily James's Deborah, who seems to relate to him in some way, who's drawn and attracted by the sense of suppression that he has. But as I say, that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. And of course, the music and the use of music probably enhance our understanding of him, but I do still think it requires an actor who knows how to show without showing. And I know that's a contradictory statement, but when you see how he does it, it's very clear what that means. And I do think that's incredibly well done on his part. And it does have a really solid cast. I mean, John Hamm is so good. Jamie Foxx is really good. I'll see if I can get her name right, because this is the second film I've covered for this series. Isa Gonzalez. Again, really, it's just got a great call. And Kevin Spacey. Okay, caveat. As I've covered with several other key figures who have been in the film industry, Kevin Spacey is an incredibly difficult person to talk about, because the public impression that we have of him indicates a difficult to process history of allegations of misconduct, both professional, professional and also sexual, and those are genuinely shocking and horrifying stories that are coming out about him, and that is genuinely something that should give everyone in the film industry pause for thought. The problem being is, during his time over the last 2-3 decades, he has been an excellent actor, and I choose to apply death of the author to the, I suppose, death of the actor, that he does portray an incredible character, but he does not make a film. And even when he is the lead, he does not make a film, and therefore, films should not be disregarded because he's in them. And again, the character's a really interesting character, and he performs it well. Kevin Spacey is is, depends how you want to see it, a good actor, a great actor. And I have to sort of separate Kevin Spacey the man to the performance I am seeing on screen. Otherwise, it will make watching other films incredibly difficult when it comes to watching sort of classic films and even films like this. But again, his character is a great character, and again, really bounces off well with Baby and with these heist teams that he puts together. And like I say, in terms of the heist film, I do think it does it really well to a point. And I think even the portrayal of Baby as the getaway driver, there's not many films that just focus on the getaway driver and we never actually see the robberies. And again, I think that there's something about this of the Italian Job. And that's the obvious comparison you could draw, because, you know, most films probably take their cues from the Italian Job. But then in addition to that, I also see something of the early Tarantino about it, particularly Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. There's something about the way that the criminals interact with each other that really sort of calls back to Reservoir Dogs. And there's something about the editing and the world that makes me think of Pulp Fiction. And of course, Edgar Wright and Tarantino are very, very different filmmakers, but the parallels are there. And I do think that the film is a great film. There was a point, an hour in, when I genuinely was like, this is truly a great film. I'm going to be singing the praises of this film, because it just, again, shows Edgar Wright's abilities as a filmmaker. Unfortunately, now I'm not going to spoil anything, because I do think this is a film that is still really good and worth watching, but I do think the last 20 or so minutes just lost me a little bit. I think it does start to devolve into a more traditional heisty, gangstery type film, and it doesn't do anything particularly original with the nature of the storytelling. It actually, whereas earlier on I thought this was an incredibly well-crafted film that was sort of foreshadowing things and thinking, oh well, this must have to pay off, and what's going to go on with here, and what's the relationship between these characters. Unfortunately, the setup doesn't lead to the strongest payoff, and like I say, the last 20-30 minutes just devolve into a more traditional crime thriller. Other than that, I still think it's a really good film. It's just, it almost made great. And that's fine, because, you know, Edgar Wright is an incredibly varied filmmaker. I still put Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead as two of my absolute favourite films. Whereas I'm not so keen on Scott Pilgrim. And, you know, this film is somewhere in the middle. It's probably above that, but below Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. And World's End is a film I think I will need to reappraise at some point, because I remember not particularly loving it, but I do think it's a film that probably deserves a second viewing. But yeah, I did think this was still a really fun film, and I do think if you like that kind of, like I say, there's so many elements to it that, of course, if you like films with that sense of using music, I think it's great. I think if you just want a crime thriller that has a bit more of a kind of heisty kind of tone to it, I think it has that. I just think this is fun. It's a really fun, refreshing watch. Just a shame it couldn't quite manage to be more than that when all is said and done. And again, you know, Edgar Wright is going on and putting onto new things. Another reason for covering this, of course, is because Edgar Wright is about to release a documentary, I believe, about a rock group. So I think making a video about his love of music seems well timed. But yeah, this was fun. Anyway, if you like this video, hit the like button, comment on the video, and share the video, because this will help me in the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell to get notifications of when videos are uploaded. Check out my back catalogue of over 150 films. And please follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I'm always tweeting about films and TV shows, and I share the links once they're uploaded to YouTube. Thank you for joining me. Take care.